All right, so with all of the kind of political garbage going on right now with the whole Supreme Court hearings and the um, ramming it through all the way, I thought I would talk about something that's not politics. So I decided to do another one of my writing, I was going to say lectures, but pieces of information. And so I thought I would share one on how to actually become a pen name, which kind of sounds like a weird title for this, but the reason I titled it that, or titled it something close to that, is a lot of people don't actually understand what a pen name actually is, and they think it's just another name. And sometimes it actually is. Like, if you remember the old Richard Bachman books, which served a specific purpose. They were Stephen King, who we found out later on. But what had happened was, back then, the industry was pretty much set to, you did one book a year. And that was pretty much all that the market could handle. Wasn't true, but that's kind of how it actually worked out. And so if they saw somebody being a little too prolific, editors and booksellers really didn't like it and thought that they were trying to, like, well, basically that readers wouldn't trust them and then wouldn't read any of the stuff that they did. So while he was writing one book after another, and Stephen King is a prolific writer, there's a few of them around over the years, like Isaac Asimov, and Lawrence Block, some other authors who just basically wrote non-stop. But anyway, so because he was in that kind of a stage of his career, he started writing books as Richard Bachman. And so until he got found out, he was going to continue doing this for a while. And he said in one of his books that he did it as a experiment to see if he could build a name under another name, because I mean he was already mega famous at the time, and kind of wonder what would happen. Later on, the author of the Harry Potter books did the same thing. Took another name, actually a male author's name, or a male name, and made that an author, and then sold that. Not a whole lot of audience bought it until they found out it was actually her, and then suddenly it became a big seller. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about today was whether or not somebody should actually do a pen name. And the reason I asked this is, or a pseudonym, pen name, pseudonym. And so people keep asking me all the time, do I write under other names? And usually that's one of those things that people throw at you when they have no idea who you are and you tell them you're a writer. Yeah, it never goes over well. And so I used to joke all the time when someone would say, do you have a pen name? And I would say, yes, I do. And they'd ask the inevitable question, what is your pen name? And I would say Stephen King, but you probably haven't heard any of my books. And so anyway, you get the joke. And so I have used a number of pen names over the years. And in the beginning, I just kind of did it to throw them out there, wrote under a couple of female names, bizarre names I kind of came up with as well, and all that kind of stuff. And so it wasn't until I actually started realizing there was much more to it if you actually wanted to make it, and I started to create personas of people that I imagined would be writers, and then writing books as them. And what I discovered is this is a much different process to writing than if you just write a book and then decide to tack on another pen name. This was a series of books that I decided that this kind of person would write this. So if I was doing like if this author was, slightly on the edge of sanity, I wanted to see what kind of books that kind of a person would write. And so I got into the persona and became that writer. And so that's now become my process when I write with a pen name. I don't write one anymore just to not have my name on it. There are some people who do it because they write erotica fiction and they don't want people to know who they are, or they'll see a male that wants to write lesbian fiction, but can't possibly get anyone to actually buy anything by it. I see a lot of romance authors. They're actually male authors writing as female names because basically if you're writing romances, you generally have to be a female in order to sell any books. I don't think that's completely the case, but there's a perception there, so that kind of happens. So basically, I just kind of wanted to share this with you, kind of give you an idea of there are different reasons to have a pen name. The most important thing is to decide, is it something you really want? Because one of the problems you can run into if you're not Stephen King or, you know, some big name like that, is you could spend quite a great deal of time writing books under this other name and never get a single person to even figure out, to buy anything that you actually write. Which makes it even worse if you're trying to create a name of your own under your regular name, because then you've got two different authors competing to get any amount of attention. And if you're trying to establish a career, sometimes not the best way to do it. So the point is, if you are creating a pen name, my advice to you is make sure you have a reason for actually doing it. Either you're trying to disguise your name, or you're writing in a completely different genre where whatever your gender is or your name just basically wouldn't make it work, or you have a specific name that basically would never sell a book. I was going through creative writing years back in college, and the guy sitting right behind me, or actually the guy sitting to the side of me, his name was Stephen King. And so I knew there was no way in the world this guy would ever be able to write under his own name. He was this Asian guy, he was actually Chinese, who basically, I don't think it was really the Stephen King. There was a guy that sat behind him, and I've talked about this guy before. There was a guy that sat behind him, and every time the teacher called roll and said Stephen King, the guy behind him would always say, "Master of Horror and Suspense." And it used to be really kind of rude. But anyway, so the idea is, if you're trying to write and you need a pen name for a specific purpose, then do it. If you're just doing it because, hey, I just want to create a pen name, you're wasting basically your time and your effort, because all of the work that you put into your own name gets completely wasted and nobody sees you, and now you're competing with yourself. So only other option I can think, or other reason I can think of for doing it, is if you're writing completely out of your genre. And there are some writers, a lot of writers today, who write completely out of their genre. So they write in science fiction this day, fantasy the next day, romance later on, and all sorts of different things, and they don't care, and readers read them. So make your choice, decide if that's something you want to do. Anyway, just a short little one I wanted to share with you, kind of just say I'm still here. Have a good one.